I'm Diego Cortez.
Adam Schoenfeld.
Welcome to The Scoop, brought to you by Full Tilt Poker. We've got David Gray back for part 2. He had very interesting things to say from the inside of the big games and the anti-Beal games.
We're going to get even more
poker
inside.
in general. But this is first hand as opposed to the normal second or third hand. If you missed part 1, look for it on Card Player TV and join us and David for part 2.
I was designated as the captain of the team. I got all the money together and everything. I brought it over to the win. Todd and I brought it over to the win.
Captain's a good term for organizer.
So Phil is there, and it was my job to monitor him, and if he was doing bad, to pull him up. Which I said, well, I'm not going to pull him up because I've never beat Phil one pot. So how would it look if I said,
That's
Phil,
like pulling Lou Gehrig out.
I'm pulling you up or something like that. So Phil plays him, and the first day they play long and hard, and Phil wins maybe like $1 million or something, which I was happy he won it, but it was no big decision. It was almost an even tussle. They decide to meet again the next day. They meet at like 11 or 10 in the morning or something. Phil's there with headphones, and Phil basically won every pot for about 7 hours. Won 16.6 million, which was nice.
Yeah.
15 more million that day. 16.6 overall.
Right.
And Andy it was sort of like what happened with Nick the Greek and Johnny Moss. He finally stood up and said, I'm going to have to quit you. And he looked at me, and me and Todd were there, and he came over and he shook my hand. And he goes, I don't think I'm ever going to see you again. And I said, Andy? I said, I don't believe one word that you say.
Right.
But if I don't ever see you again, it was really nice meeting you and everything. And he was just a perfect gentleman. And he did it. It's been like 2.5 years. He's never come back. So what's wrong with this guy? He actually bought a racetrack and races cars. His friend of his turned him on. He had this super souped up Corvette, and it was modified for racing. And there's this private racetrack like the Speedway. And he took Andy there, and Andy started driving this car around the track. First 80, 100 miles an hour. Then he got a little more of his nerve, and he was going 120, maybe 130 miles an hour. He started doing that quite often. Then he really got into it. He bought the racetrack. He bought 2 Formula One cars for $1.5 million each. And now, instead of playing poker, he drives his cars around the track 170 miles an hour by himself.
Phil Ivey race him in the street. Phil can use a street car.
Well, Phil has, McLaren, so I mean, he's...
Well, guys like Andy Beal, they find a new challenge and they move on to that.
He was very excited with poker, but I think he finally realized he wasn't really... He thought by playing really high, he could put a lot of pressure on us, and that would be his...
Right.
Oh, there's Phil right there. His equalizer. He probably figured he was never really quite as good as us, but he figured he could almost be as good as us, but he could put us under shooting some free throws down by 1 and with 2 seconds to go. You're out of your comfort zone. But he really didn't know that we had first of all, once there was enough of us in there, we were playing 30 and 60,000 20 ways. It's like playing 1,500 and 3,000, which is what we play every day.
You can handle that.
Yeah, so I mean, it's we've lost.
The one thing that I always thought, trying to put myself in that situation, is that when you've got so much money on the line, maybe not at the later stages, but in the early phases or when you were temporarily losing, having somebody else playing all the money creates a different dynamic. I mean, did that ever get into your head where my money's on the line, but I'm not making any decisions here, and as much as I respect this guy...
Well, I made the decision to be in, so I did make that decision, and once I did that, I didn't really second guess it. We did lose a few times, but the 2 times that we lost big were the time you beat Chip out of that $8 million playing 1 and 200,000. We decided we didn't want to play 1 and 200,000 anymore.
Yeah.
Because we didn't want to have any kind of small, short-term bad streak. We thought we were just going to win. And of course, almost everyone in there but me thought that we were just supposed to win every time, 10
Right, that was
it was incredible that people were saying, God, I can't believe how lucky Andy was. And I said, lucky? He lost $8 million or $6 million.
That's what I meant
He should have
earlier.
lost 15. I said, you think he should have just played with cards with no faces on them? That
Lost every
he always
hand.
ended up with 3 high?
blanks, right.
Yeah.
That's what I meant earlier when I said the euphoria of winning.
You figure to have the best hand half the time. So why should he even figure to really lose? You just got to get a couple extra bets here and there and outplay him a little
Showdown
bit.
every hand, right?
It was a showdown in a lot of hands, so no one's folding before the flop, almost ever. You have to have 7 deuce to fold before the flop when the guy raises. I mean, no one was folding Jack 4 in a million years.
Right.
Either guy. You know, there's like 50,000 laying out there, and a guy makes it 100. Now there's 150,000 in the pot, and you figure he probably doesn't have much.
Right.
and he didn't most of the time.
Right.
So
Was it a healthy dynamic where everyone just played their game and sometimes you lose, or was there second guessing?
There was second guessing afterwards, not about how hands were played, particular hands or anything, but you know, just God, how'd you let this guy lose $7 million? Why didn't you pull him up or something? And I said, I don't know, what's the hell $7 million when a guy's playing 50 and 100,000? It's like, you know, head up. You can lose like 50 or 60 bets like in one dealer. You can just lose like 6 hands in a row that you flop second pair and you can never fold.
I had the misfortune the year that was going on. I ran into Howard down at I think we were still downtown then, or it might have been the Rio. Anyway, I said, "Hey, Bob, I heard about that big game, you know." And
Bob played.
And I said, "How'd it go?" He's like, "I just lost 30 big bets. That's how it went." So I have, you know, I felt like an asshole because.
But Bub won most of the time. Bub did very well at the beginning. But everyone did very well at the, yeah. The people that did the best, Phil did the best at the end, and Ted did very well until that one day when him and Jen lost. And Jen had also done well, and Todd had done well, and Howard.
I saw with my own eyes.
They were like basically the players that were playing most of the time. Right. There were a few others that played. I played a couple times. Chow played once or twice. Doyle played.
During one of the negotiations, didn't Andy want to specify that Howard couldn't play or something?
Yeah, he eventually
play Howard or Todd, right?
He eventually had a couple people on the barred list.
I saw Jen sitting, and I think literally she couldn't see over the $25,000 chips because she's quite petite, as we know.
There was a lot of chips when we ended up winning that money. Todd and I brought that money back to the Bellagio, and we were deciding how to do it.
Yeah, that's not a non-trivial.
Because we had $26 million.
That's a non-trivial
chips.
problem.
That was a lot of chips.
Yeah.
And
what security arrangements did you make?
We decided to have no security arrangements. Todd was the security.
Right.
And he was armed.
Todd's good. Oh.
He like pulled his car up. I had like a bag full of money. He went and got his car and pulled it up, and like I just like went right out. His car was like, you know, in the self park there, right outside the Ferrari dealership in the wind. And you just walk out. I saw Todd's car. I got in. I got in the car. Gigantic pistol on my seat.
Were you nervous then?
I was nervous that Todd was going to take care of me. And,
regardless,
and then say something happened. No, but I mean, actually nothing happened. We just pulled out on Las Vegas Boulevard. We were in the Bellagio in 2 minutes. 3 minutes.
Regardless, that's still the biggest gamble of the whole thing because anything
that was
can happen.
Pretty scary. Well, actually, if someone came to rob us, we would have given up the chips very easily, and nothing could have happened because no one else could have cashed those chips. I mean, they knew that we had. This wasn't like cashing one $500 chip where someone could cash. This is $26 million and $25,000 chips.
That afternoon they walk in.
They were basically
$26 million. I like to cash.
They were basically worthless to anybody but me and Todd.
True.
And they knew we were bringing them to the Bellagio, and then the Bellagio was going to trade them in for Bellagio chips, because they gave us all the money in chips, because then we had to go divvy it up, which was fun, by the way, divvying up all that money, even 20 ways. It was like everyone was getting like 1.3 million.
Even 20 ways.
Yeah, it's sort of sickening to have to give those other 19 fools that were partners with me that money.
I hadn't thought of that, but that'd be a hard chip laundering operation.
You notice when
yeah, it was really not really dangerous, but it seemed dangerous. But
when you have Jews and Texans, the Texan is the security guy.
I was the bookkeeper.
Yeah, there you go.
It surprises me a little bit, something I hadn't heard because I've read a lot about it and heard secondhand, but that the very first heads-up match, Chip went in, and obviously he's known as the greatest or one of the greatest players ever, but not known
he was
so much
losing at the start
as a limit hold'em player. But he was the
guy, and he was actually losing for quite a while. He might have still been losing when Ted got in the game, and that was before we knew, like, maybe this guy, we didn't know anything, and for all we knew, Andy was some kind of card mechanic or something like that.
Right.
You know, he could have been doing anything. As little did we found out later that he was like a guy that owned a bank and was a billionaire and just an eccentric guy. You know, he spent like $200 million building a rocket ship to fly himself to the moon, which he never went, by the way, because it was traffic.
Yet.
But yeah.
But he was the ultimate drop-in.
But he was, that was like the one guy. That's the greatest drop-in in history. And there's been some others which are still sort of playing, which I don't want to talk about. But
were you around when Archie Karras had those big heads-up matches? That was akin to this, wasn't it?
Well, Archie actually, before Andy had come around, they played as high as 10 and 20,000 limit. He played Lyle. They played a three-handed game. Chip, Lyle, and Archie. As a matter of fact, they also played head up. Chip played him more than anyone, and Archie had some good results against Chip, and ended up losing it at the end. But he was winning. He was beating everyone.
Yeah,
wow. He beat Stewie a bunch of times. He beat everyone but Doyle. Everyone that he played, and Archie had a nefarious past. So He had won a lot of money shooting dice, but he was like sort of a criminalistic type guy. And
There are always
you know,
questions
but
about.
not necessarily. You know, he was always suspected of doing stuff. And matter of fact, he asked me to play him head up Raz one day, 8 and 1600, and I said, well, it depends. This is long before he won the crap scores, but he would occasionally make these scores. I said, with or without? He said, with or without what? I said, the cheating, of course. He said, with. I said, no.
At least he was honorable about
He
that.
said
He
with,
look,
yeah.
of course.
With.
How could you even ask?
So I didn't play him. I played him a lot of different times, but
There are always questions about. He'd had a big run that got him started playing craps. There are always questions about his craps
throwing
playing,
technique. His technique.
he won all that money without shooting the dice ever. That was part of his deal at the worship, was he could only bet, he couldn't shoot the dice.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
That tells you something.
Oh, they knew he was a known dice slider and mechanic and stuff like
Right.
that. He actually got started he won about $1 million and change playing pool.
Playing pool, yeah.
And then he won a couple million playing poker. Then he won about 30 million shooting dice.
So you've been firsthand witness to all this. Now you weren't at the
I've known
Johnny
Archie
Moss,
for 27
but
years.
you were not at the Johnny Moss.
Nick Dandel.
right, not from what I read.
I wasn't even born then.
Yeah.
I think that was in the 50s. I was born in 59. So
Some people say that never
But
happened.
that's why I say that.
I'm pretty sure it happened.
When you were playing in the big games, this is before TV, before people were aware there was a big game. You know, I mean now.
The big games, I remember when the big game was 2 and 400 was the biggest game you saw, except for like the once or twice a year 8 and 1600 7-card stud game that Eric Drake would have with like Doyle and Chip and Roger Moore and a few of these Sarge and whatever, some of these guys. And that to me looked like all the money in the world. They play down at the Golden Nugget, and I'd look and everyone would have 40, 50, 60,000 in front of them. And I'm thinking, they're betting like, guy just raised at 3,200 on a pair of kings, and I'm thinking, wow, that's like so much money. It's like, you know, I was living in Bob Stupak's house at the time. I was renting it, not living with Bill. I moved to town. I had an apartment, and my friend was renting Bob Stupak's house, and he bought a house, and he said, "Do you want to move into this house instead of this apartment you're living in?" And I remember I was paying $1,500 a month rent, which seemed insane in 1986.
Right.
In Las Vegas. This isn't New York City.
That's like $12,000 now.
Yeah, I mean, it was unbelievable. It was this house in the Las Vegas Country Club. It had an indoor pool, like 4 bedrooms, mirrored ceilings and everything.
Right, that was baller.
It was, yeah, and it was like unbelievable. So I looked at the house and everything, and I said, all right, I'll move in there. And now the guy is like, Eric is like, you know, he's got like 6-8 deuce showing or something, and the guy looks like he has a pair of queens, and he bet 1,600, and Eric just made it 3,200. And I said, oh, what has he got? And I figured he had aces, because Eric always had aces. And he did. But but I'm thinking, God, that's like a few months' rent, just one bet. And it seems so big. And now you just log on to the internet any day. And
Any day.
I mean, it's like insane, the games that they play. There's sometimes 2, 3, 4 games of 500 and 1,000.
500, 1,000,
Blind,
no limit. Or
no
pot
limit
limit.
and pot limit, which
Yeah.
is so big.
Short-handed.
Yeah, they're playing, I mean, like,
Six-handed.
queen, queen, 6 deuce with queen deuce of spades, and it comes, you know, 10, 9, 3, 2
Yeah.
spades. That's 100,000 you got to put in.
Oh,
with that
that's
hand.
The
for
whole
stacks.
stack.
That's for stacks.
That never ever gets folded without raising, because
Well, it's
obviously-
short. It is short.
And they have on the sites, you know,
Yeah.
biggest pots of the day, and you see the 5 biggest pots of the day every day are $250,000 or $500,000.
Yeah, they have a lot of very
That's
big
many
pots.
months of rent, even by
Many days.
post-inflation.
Somebody wins $300,000-$400,000 or more.
Oh, every day now, yeah.
Yeah.
Many days. Sometimes there's 2 or 3 guys that have won 200,000 or 300,000 on full tilt. Like
Do you
in those
play
big
in the super big game?
No.
I've actually had the honor of playing with you in the 30-60 limit hold'em game.
I play 30, 60,
Yeah, which
50, and 100 all the time.
Yeah.
I can chat.
Right.
I can watch sports. I'm listening to the dead. I'm doing all kinds of things, and I'm playing and saying, "Oh, that's not a good card."
Right.
But you know, it's like, you know, a lot of these guys that are playing really high, almost all of them are like these young lions
Yeah.
that like
Fearless.
they had no money like a year ago. If they have no money a week from now, it won't bother them that much.
They don't
I mean,
even, they don't
you know,
even, they don't
It's
even
gonna
have
bother.
rents.
It will bother me a lot
Right.
if I had no money like
Right.
next week.
You know, maybe Phil Ivey is the only person who's properly bankrolled that I see playing in that game.
Well, I don't even know what some of these guys' bankrolls are. I think
I don't
a lot
know
of these
either.
guys have tremendous bankrolls because they've done a lot of winning. Talking about guys like Durr and Phil Gelfand and those guys. These guys have won a lot of money. So I don't know what they've done with it, if they've invested it. I don't think that Durr or Phil are big spenders type guys.
I don't know.
Although I
about,
know Durr bought a nice Mercedes.
I don't know.
Because he bought it when I was
He's
sitting at the
entitled.
table with him. No, he's won a lot for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know about individuals. Certainly, there are guys who won a lot. I still don't think they have the appreciation for the volatility.
Oh, of course
I mean,
not.
They've won so much.
Even if you have
and they
$3
figure if
million
they
in your
lose it-
account.
$3 million.
What the hell is
in that
$3
case
million
nothing.
when you're playing 1 or 2,000 no limit, and every time you click it, you just buy in for like 100,000 at a time. And if you lose it like on one hand, you just put in another
Right.
100,000.
Right.
So you can go for 5, 6, 700,000 in an hour.
in nothing.
Easily.
In
Yes.
an hour.
So that's
They
the
don't
one,
realize how much money
That's
they're
the one
playing
thing
for.
they.
That's the
Exactly.
It's
that's
not
it's a
like
blind spot.
brick and mortar cash. You know, it's like one of the greatest invention for casinos was chips.
Right.
Now
This is the next
they've taken
level.
chips to like chips are like nothing now compared to like clicking.
Just numbers.
Clicking is like insane.
Yeah. If you've got a problem in terms of bankroll management,
The
Oh my.
internet is not yours.
the internet may not be your friend.
No.
Yeah, you
But on
can
the other
really go
hand-
off. Of course, it's such a small percentage of the people that play on the internet, but
Yeah.
Let's talk about your personal style for a minute. On Barry Greenstein's site, there's a great section on you, and there's a great quote from you, and there's a great quote about you from Barry. Barry says that you are the only ABC player that's ever been successful in the long term in the big game.
except for Chip. He didn't put Chip in there though. I play like almost the same exact way Chip plays. Or
Did-
played.
I mean,
Did
he's
you
saying
learn
it.
it from
He's
Chip?
saying it as a.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
This is not a criticism, right?
No,
he's saying it as
no.
he's saying it as a compliment, of course.
I never steam. I never go off. I'm a good manager and I play good hands.
Mhm.
And I'm patient as hell. So
See, the other quote, one that I've been quoting to Adam for years.
Right,
and
we
then
talk about this all the
we,
time.
We found it online in the course of our research, and
Oh, yeah?
I was glad that I was vindicated. Was where you'd said, and I'm paraphrasing, you know, I've been playing here for 25 years, and every time I raise or I complete with the high card,
Yeah.
they think this time I don't have it, and they call
Yeah.
me down the whole way.
and I always have it.
Yeah, every time.
Why would I raise? I get called. It's like if I didn't get any action, if I found that every single time I re-raised somebody with a king instead,
Right.
like it was just like
No.
on the internet,
Right.
then I would have to like start re-raising with like King Jack 10. But as long as I can fold King Jack 10 when a queen raises and re-raise with kings or aces and get action, I don't have to play King
See,
Jack 10.
what's amazing to me is that
People don't even pay any attention to who's doing what.
But see, what's amazing to me is that's 100% true in the games that I play, which are mid-limit games. But when you're playing against Doyle Brunson and Chip Reese, and
These guys have too much gamble.
they just like the action.
How come no one else has succeeded with that style then? Because it seems like a simple recipe for success, but
No
is
one
it-
else can lay it down like I can.
Right.
They can't throw away the 2 7s and a 9 when a 10 raises. I don't even think about calling it. Unless there's a good chance the guy's stealing.
Right.
But when a guy raises like in the first position of a 7-handed game,
Right.
and there's like a jack and a king behind him,
You give them
and I'm
credit.
right after him with split 9s and a 7, or even a 7 up and 2 9s in the hole, in general, unless there's some distinct reason, but basically I just don't ever play that hand.
I'm going to
And
play
the
this
other-
way from
the
now
other-
on.
Yeah, this is the way I've been playing.
I know,
need
you
to
do play
work
that
it
way.
up.
It works, by the way.
Yeah.
Speaking of the big game and these big games that you played in, of course there's a whole culture around them. I mean, there's a camaraderie, there's a respect. As an outsider, I almost feel like a lot of that's been lost. It's not the same dynamic, but is that just my misimpression, or is it just a different?
Well,
Different
the
worlds.
big game is, first of
Just
all,
a live
not an
big game.
ongoing thing at the moment.
Yeah.
It's a very sporadic thing. You know, let's say during the World Series, there'll be some big games, maybe the week that they have that WPT $25,000 tournament. A lot of people will be in town, so they'll play some big games. But in the day-to-day, we used to, like, never go 3 weeks without a big game. We'd usually play pretty regularly, sometimes 4 or 5 times a week. And there was also big games going on in LA because,
Right.
like in the early, in
And Larry Flynt's
from the
game.
from the late 90s all the way till, like, I was living in LA in 2002 to 2004. I had a place there and a place here, and I was playing mostly in LA because Larry was playing like 4 or 5 times a week,
Right.
2 and 4,000 stud,
Yeah.
and that was a good game
I
until
know.
Phil won every pot for about a year straight. But and the
that'll
ones
do
he
it.
the ones he didn't win, Barry won.
Right.
And by that time, we had been run short on players, so it was like me against those two and Larry.
So is the internet that did away with the game, or the economy, or a combination?
Well, it's a combination of things. The internet has made it so much easier for people to just sort of roll out of their bed in their pajamas, click on and play, and plus there's a lot of guys that are complete action junkies. So unfortunately,
Just
like
playing 3,000, 4,000
playing
lives, not
one
enough
game,
action.
2 and 4,000 live, where you get 28 to 32 hands an hour, as opposed to playing 3 tables on full tilt, where you're getting 120 hands an hour per table.
Yeah.
And so, like, guys that like to play as high as possible, like Phil, gets so much more action,
Right.
so much more dollars bet per hour on the internet. He probably gets 10 times to 20 times more action than in a 2 and 4,000 game. So it becomes easier to win big and to lose big, and it's very easy. You don't have to like call and drive down and do everything.
Sure.
But there was something about the camaraderie and the sort of
Right, and you were a big part of that. You're a very social person.
and Doyle's like funny and with his
Right.
complaining and everything. You know, Doyle's a professional moaner, but he's really funny.
Has Doyle always been that way, or is he crankier now that he's a little older?
He's not cranky. He's just a moaner.
Oh, he seems cranky on TV because he's yelling at guys for taking too much time. Come on, fellas!
Well,
There's a fine line between moaning and crank.
yeah, he's sometimes cranky, but he's really I wouldn't really put him in the cranky category. I put him more in the he can't believe if he ever loses a pot category.
Yeah, that too.
You know, like,
As if he's never
and then
won,
he'll start
he's
saying
never won
something,
one.
and then he'll look at me and he'll go, "Why do I bother? Nobody cares but me." He says.
Now you won your first bracelet in Stud High. That's always been the game that you're recognized as being best at. There's no more Stud High, is there, as far as just a straight game?
Well, in
Larry
California,
Flint tried to
in
pump
California,
it for a while.
Larry actually gave me a call just a few weeks ago and said he was going to start playing again. They played one time, and then they haven't resumed yet. But there's a chance that he might start playing. But in California, they play a lot of Stud High, but like 1 and 2, 2 and 400 limit. But there's a strong game at the Commerce. Sometimes 2 or 3 games going on at once, 1 and 2. But there's almost no stud in Las Vegas. In Las Vegas, the only high games basically are once in a while a no limit game or a mixed game of some kind. And the mixed game is so mixed that it's like,
a real mixed game. With
I mean,
Badoogie,
it's 7,
12
8,
games,
9,
yeah.
10 games,
with
2 or
Badoogie
3
and
triple
draws.
draws,
everything.
ace to 5, deuce to 7 triple draw, Badoogie, 2 Omaha 8 betters. You basically, it's almost impossible to like have any game where you just win the whole pot. Raz and stud, you know, and they don't even. Sometimes they don't even have stud in the mix. There's
Right.
8 games without stud because nobody wants to play stud. Why? Because you have to like sort of pay attention to what's going on in stud.
Right.
That's no good. Just triple draw. Oh, deuce 5, 7, 9. Good. Take 2.
Well, it's been a pleasure.
Thank
and
you,
I
David.
appreciate you coming by, David. And
Where do I pick up my
good
check?
stuff. Adam's gonna.
When I
take
get
care
my
of it.
magazine.
All right. When you get the refund?
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks for joining us on
All
The
right.
Scoop.
It was nice being here.
Brought to you by Full Tilt Poker. Write to us at The Scoop, cardplayer.com.
Two bracelets. Awesome.
Well, you know, these aren't easy to win. I remember this one like it was yesterday. My opponent had me down to my left. Sorry. Anyway, it's down to my last few chips. So I had to call.
We play at FullTiltPoker.com.